My boyfriend dumped me because I was just a waitress and didn't fit into his high society world. He spent our final dinner bragging about his interview at Vanguard Holdings. Little did he know, I don't just work at the restaurant. I own it. And I'm the CEO of the company he's desperate to join. See you at the interview, Mark. The atmosphere in the restaurant is suffocating, heavy with the scent of expensive steak and the bitter tang of a dying relationship. I stand by the table, my fingers gripping the edge of my serving tray until my knuckles turn white. Across from me, Mark looks different tonight. He isn't the man I supported for 3 years while he struggled through night school. He's wearing a new, sharp silver suit, one I paid for, and his eyes are filled with a cold, condescending light I've never seen before. The clinking of silverware from the surrounding tables sounds like a funeral march, marking the end of everything we built. He doesn't even look at my face. He just stares at the embroidered logo on my waitress uniform with a sneer that twists his features into something unrecognizable. He leans forward, the candlelight dancing in his eyes, and tells me that he's moving on to bigger things. His voice is a low, jagged blade as he explains that I am a liability to his new life. He's just landed an executive role at Vanguard Holdings, a firm that represents the absolute pinnacle of corporate power. He says he needs a woman who matches that power, someone who belongs in the high society ballrooms and glass boardrooms he'll be frequenting. A girl who smells like kitchen grease and works for tips would only embarrass him. He calls my hard work a small town ambition and laughs at the idea of me ever standing beside him in his new world. He tells me he needs a partner who actually belongs in the room, not someone who is paid to serve the food. I don't interrupt him. I don't cry and I don't beg. I stand there perfectly still, an invisible witness to his true character. The disrespect is a physical weight, but I use it to anchor myself. He mistakes my silence for weakness. Mark stands up, checking his reflection in a nearby mirror with an arrogant tilt of his chin. He reaches into his leather wallet, pulls out a crumpled $20 bill, and tosses it onto the white tablecloth like he's feeding a stray dog. He tells me to keep the change because, in his words, I'll need it much more than he ever will. He turns his back and walks out of the dining room with a strut that suggests he thinks he's already conquered the city. I watch him go, his shadow disappearing through the heavy oak doors of the entrance. My heart is beating with a cold, rhythmic precision. He thinks he just dumped a waitress, but he has no idea he just insulted the hand that feeds him. He doesn't know that I didn't get this job through an agency. I didn't apply for this position. I am standing in this uniform because I like to see how my businesses run from the ground up. Mark walked out of my restaurant, onto a street where I own every building on the block. He is heading home to a penthouse that is registered in my name. And tomorrow morning, when he walks into Vanguard Holdings for his first day, he's going to find out that the woman he just discarded doesn't just work in the room. She owns the entire building. Most people see a waitress and see a servant. Mark saw a placeholder. But what he didn't see was the person who signed the lease on his car, the deed to his apartment, and the very ground he's walking on. You're about to see what happens when a man tries to burn a bridge while he's still standing in the middle of it. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who wasn't even on your level, hit that subscribe button. You aren't going to want to miss how I dismantled his entire world by breakfast. The dawn breaks over the city in streaks of gold and cold violet, hitting the glass exterior of the Vanguard Holdings skyscraper until it glows like a beacon of absolute power. I step out of the plush leather interior of a black town car, the cool morning air biting at my skin. The weight of the world feels different today. The simple polyester waitress apron and the lingering scent of coffee grounds have been stripped away, replaced by the crisp, intimidating lines of a $1,000 ivory power suit. Every stitch of this fabric is a statement of intent. I am no longer the girl who blends into the background of a busy dining room. I am the centerpiece of this skyline. As I approach the towering glass entrance, the shift in reality is instantaneous. The security guards, men who would have looked right through me 12 hours ago, straighten their spines the moment I come into view. They don't just open the heavy doors, they move with a frantic, disciplined respect, standing at rigid attention as I pass. Their voices are a low, synchronized chorus of "Good morning, ma'am," and "Welcome back, CEO." I don't need to check my reflection to know that the woman they see is a force of nature. I walk through the vast, echoing lobby, the rhythmic click of my designer heels striking the marble floor like a countdown to Mark's inevitable downfall. The lobby is a cathedral of commerce, filled with people rushing toward elevators, desperate to climb a ladder that I already sit atop. I feel the cold weight of a diamond watch on my left wrist, a subtle reminder that my time is far more valuable than Mark could ever comprehend. He spoke to me about high society as if it were a gated community I could never enter, never realizing that I am the one who maintains the gates. Every person I pass, from the junior analysts to the senior vice presidents, steps aside to clear my path. I don't walk through this space. I own the air within it. The power isn't just in the suit or the jewelry, it is in the absolute certainty that I am exactly where I belong. I bypass the crowded public banks and head straight for the private executive elevator, a secluded alcove of brushed steel and tinted glass. This is the inner sanctum of the building, a place where entry isn't granted by a badge or a smile, but by a fingerprint scan that confirms my identity as the ultimate authority. I place my thumb against the glowing blue sensor, and with a soft, mechanical hiss, the doors slide open to reveal a private cabin lined in mirrors and mahogany. This elevator doesn't stop at the mid-levels where Mark will be desperately trying to impress his new colleagues. It only has one destination, the top floor. As the doors begin to close, sealing me away from the noise of the lobby, I finally catch a full view of my reflection in the polished chrome. The woman staring back at me has eyes that are as sharp and unforgiving as flint. I think of Mark, who is likely at home right now, adjusting his cheap silver suit and rehearsing his lies for the interview of a lifetime. He thinks he left a servant behind on the floor of a restaurant, a girl he could discard once she was no longer useful to his ego. He is walking into this building today thinking he is a predator entering a new hunting ground. He has no idea that he is walking into a lion's den, and I am the one holding the keys to his cage. The doors snap shut with a finality that echoes through the shaft, and as the floor numbers begin to climb, my smile deepens. The game hasn't even started yet, and I've already won. The silence inside the boardroom is heavy, filtered through thick glass and the quiet hum of an advanced climate control system. I enter the room, and the low murmur of the directors, men with decades of experience and millions in their portfolios, dies away instantly. Their hushed tones are replaced by a sharp, collective focus as I move toward the head of the table. I take my seat in the high-backed leather chair, the center of this corporate universe, and feel the cold, smooth surface of the mahogany under my palms. I don't say a word, I simply lean back, letting the gravity of my presence settle over the room. On the desk before me lies a pristine stack of resumes, the life's work of people desperate to enter these doors. I begin to leaf through them with a slow, deliberate rhythm, my eyes scanning credentials that mean nothing if the character behind them is hollow. The final folder in the stack is thin, almost fragile compared to the others. I open it, and there he is, Mark Stevens. His headshot is a masterpiece of unearned confidence, his jaw set in that same arrogant tilt I saw across the candlelit table only hours ago. Seeing his face in this professional context, stripped of the romantic history he chose to burn, makes him look incredibly small. To these directors, he is just another hopeful candidate looking for a seat at the table. To me, he is the man who tossed a $20 bill at my dignity and walked out on a life he was too blind to appreciate. I stare at his listed accomplishments, knowing exactly how many of those nights he spent studying while I worked double shifts to keep his lights on. He built his bridge to this room using my bones, never realizing I was the one who owned the destination. The intercom on the table chimes with a soft, melodic tone. My assistant's voice comes through, crisp and professional, announcing that the final candidate has arrived and is waiting in the executive lobby. She notes that he seems exceptionally eager, telling the receptionist that he's the perfect fit for the firm and that his hire is basically a formality. I feel a cold spark of amusement ignite in my chest. He's out there right now, likely checking his reflection in the glass, straightening that silver suit I bought him, and practicing his firm, trustworthy handshake. He thinks he's about to walk into his future. He has no idea he's actually walking into his reckoning. I press the button on the console and tell my assistant to hold him for exactly 5 minutes. I tell her to offer him water, but to make sure he sees the reserved signs on the executive offices. I want him to stew in his own ambition. I want him to fix his tie one last time, to adjust his cuffs, and to build up that tower of ego until it reaches the ceiling. The more confident he feels in this moment, the more devastating the collapse will be when he sees who is sitting in this chair. I want him to believe, for 5 more minutes, that he is the protagonist of a success story, rather than the villain of a tragedy he wrote for himself. I stand up and walk toward the one-way glass that overlooks the waiting area. From this side, I am a ghost. From his side, it is just a mirror reflecting his own vanity. I watch him strut across the lobby, his movements jerky with a restless, nervous energy he tries to mask as power. He checks his watch. The watch I gave him for our last anniversary, and sighs with a performative impatience. He treats the receptionist with a dismissive, perfunctory nod, the same way he treated me when I wore the apron. It's fascinating to watch a man who thinks he's a lion when he's really just a mouse in a maze I designed. He truly believes he's a high society executive now. He truly believes he's moved on to bigger things. The directors behind me are waiting for my signal to begin the interview. I turn back to the table, my face a mask of absolute, professional stone. This man called me a greasy placeholder less than 10 hours ago. He told me I would embarrass him in a room like this. He told me I didn't belong in the high society world he was about to conquer. Now I am the one holding his entire career in the palm of my hand. I am the one who decides if he ever works in this city again, or if his name becomes a warning whispered in every boardroom from here to the coast. I sit back down, adjust the folder with his name on it, and calmly tell my assistant to send him in. The game is over. The lesson is about to begin. The heavy, soundproof oak doors swing open with a smooth, mechanical precision, and Mark strides into the room as if he is entering a coronation. He is wearing that practiced, arrogant grin, the one he uses when he thinks he's the smartest person in the room. He carries himself with a swagger that suggests he's already mentally moved into his new corner office, his chest puffed out under that silver suit. He starts to raise his hand, ready to offer a firm, executive handshake to the board, his eyes scanning the room for the man he expects to see in charge. But as his gaze travels to the head of the mahogany table and finally locks onto mine, the world stops spinning for him. The grin doesn't just fade, it curdles. The transformation is instantaneous and visceral. The smug, golden glow of his confidence is replaced by a sickly, ashen gray as the color drains from his face. His hand, still halfway raised for that handshake, begins to tremble before he pulls it back as if he's been burned. He actually stumbles, his heel catching on the plush carpet as he recoils against the doorframe for support. His eyes are wide, darting from my ivory power suit to the diamond watch on my wrist, and finally to the CEO nameplate sitting directly in front of me. He gasps my name, but it isn't a greeting, it's a choked, broken sound of pure terror. His voice is a thin, pathetic tremble as he asks what I am doing here and why I am sitting in that chair. I don't give him the luxury of a heartbeat to recover. I don't offer him a seat, and I don't acknowledge his shock with anything other than a cold, predatory silence. The board of directors watches him with a mixture of confusion and growing distaste, seeing a man who has completely lost his composure before the first question is even asked. I lean forward slowly, the movement deliberate and commanding, and I reach into the shallow drawer of my desk. I pull out the same crumpled $20 bill he tossed at me last night. The one he thought was a final insult to a lowly waitress. I slide it across the vast, polished expanse of the mahogany table. It stops right at the edge, directly in front of his shaking hands. The silence in the room is like a physical weight, pressing the air out of his lungs. I look him dead in the eye, my voice steady and sharp as a scalpel. I tell him that he was right about one thing last night, Vanguard Holdings only hires the elite, the visionaries, and those with the character to lead. But character isn't built in boardrooms, it's revealed in how you treat people who can do absolutely nothing for you. I tell him that a man who lacks the basic decency to respect the person serving his dinner is far too small-minded, far too weak, and far too insignificant to ever serve my company. The bill sits there between us, a paper monument to his own stupidity. I watch his fingers twitch near the money, but he's too paralyzed to touch it. The realization is finally sinking into his brain, hitting him with the force of a tidal wave. This job wasn't just a career move for him. It was his escape hatch, his proof that he had finally made it and left the servant class behind. Now he's realizing that the person he stepped on to climb that ladder is the same person who owns the ladder. Every dream he had of the high society life he bragged about is evaporating in the cold, pressurized air of this office. I see the exact moment he understands that his dream job didn't just vanish because of a bad interview. It was never his to begin with. He was disqualified the second he chose to be a shadow of a man. The arrogance that he wore like armor just 10 minutes ago has completely shattered, leaving him standing there exposed and pathetic in front of the city's most powerful directors. He looks at me, and I see the desperate, frantic cogs turning in his head, trying to find a way to lie or charm his way out of this. But there is no charm for this. There is no apology that can erase the sight of him sneering at me in that restaurant. I don't look away, and I don't blink. I let him sit in the crushing weight of his own failure. He thought he was walking into his future, but he walked into a mirror that is showing him exactly how small he truly is. In 10 seconds, Mark is going to realize that the small-town waitress he discarded isn't just his boss. She's his landlord, his judge, and the person who just deleted his future. He thought he was moving up, but he forgot that the higher you climb, the harder the concrete feels when you're dropped. Before I show you his final walk of shame, join the circle and subscribe. I'm showing you exactly how to turn disrespect into an empire. The air in the boardroom is static with the electricity of Mark's total collapse. He finally finds his voice, but it isn't the voice of the executive he pretended to be. It's a high, frantic stammer that trips over itself in a desperate rush for survival. He begins to plead, his words tumbling out in a messy, incoherent stream of excuses. He tells me that he was stressed, that the pressure of the new job was getting to him, and that he didn't mean a single word of what he said at the restaurant. He actually takes a step forward, reaching out as if to grab the edge of my desk, begging for a second chance to prove he's the man for the position. He promises loyalty, he promises hard work, and he promises to make it up to me if I just give him this one opportunity to show who he really is. I don't let him finish. I simply raise my hand, a small, effortless gesture that cuts through his desperate rambling like a blade. The silence that follows is absolute. I look at him, seeing the sweat beads forming on his forehead and the way his expensive-looking tie is now crooked and mocking him. I tell him, with a calm that is far more terrifying than anger, that he was actually right about one thing last night. He does need to move up in the world. He needs to evolve, to grow, and to learn what it means to be a person of substance. But I clarify that he will be doing that growing somewhere very far away from me, my company, and the paycheck he was counting on to fund his new lifestyle. The support system he spent years taking for granted is officially permanently closed. I don't waste another second of my time on him. I reach out and press the button on my desk console, signaling for the security team waiting just outside the doors. The heavy oak panels open once more, and two massive men in dark suits step into the room. Mark's eyes dart between them and me, his face twisting in a final, pathetic realization that there is no talking his way out of this. As they move to take him by the arms, I lean forward and point to the crumpled $20 bill still sitting on the mahogany table. I remind him to take his tip back. I tell him he should hold on to it tightly, because with the bridges he burned last night and the reputation I am about to ensure he has in this industry, he is going to be unemployed for a very, very long time. He is led out of the room, his shoes scuffing against the floor as he tries to maintain some shred of dignity while being escorted like a common trespasser. I stand up and walk slowly toward the floor-to-ceiling glass window that overlooks the city. From this height, the people on the sidewalk look like ants, and the cars look like toys. I wait, watching with a detached interest, until I see the tiny figure of a man in a silver suit being ushered out of the front doors 60 floors below. I watch as the security guards release him, and he is left standing alone on the concrete, looking small, broken, and completely abandoned in a city that no longer has a place for him. He looks up at the skyscraper once, a final glance at the empire he thought he could trick his way into, before he disappears into the crowd of people who actually work for a living. I turn away from the window, the sun reflecting off my watch and the polished surfaces of my office. The drama is over, and the air in the room feels cleaner, as if a fever has finally broken. The board of directors is silent, watching me with a new level of respect and perhaps a hint of fear. I return to my chair and pick up my fountain pen, the weight of it familiar and solid in my hand. I don't mention Mark's name again. I simply look at the men and women sitting around the table and tell them that it's time we get back to business. I tell them that we are looking for excellence, we are looking for integrity, and most importantly, it's time we find someone with actual class. I click my pen, open the next file, and begin the search for a candidate who actually deserves a seat at my table. Mark learned the hard way that you never bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand owns the whole kitchen. But it makes me wonder. If you found out your partner was secretly a millionaire while they were supporting you, would you have the nerve to call them a placeholder to their face? Or did Mark just set a world record for the most expensive mistake in history? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading every single one.